You've entered Bookstorm. Your favorite authors are here to dive down deep into their best-selling books. Stay tuned to brave the storm.
All right, welcome back to Bookstorm Podcast listeners. We are so happy that you're here. We've got you all over the world in 101 countries and territories, all 50 states, and more than 2,000 cities where you are regularly tuning in from. And we know why. We have fantastic authors that are coming on the show, and you love the one that is here today. We are so thrilled to welcome New York Times bestselling author Sarah Penner. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for having me, and hello to all of your listeners.
In fact, I think our listeners probably know you from your prior books because they were wildly popular and debuted on the New York Times bestsellers list. I think at number 7, The Lost Apothecary and the London Seance Society, and deservedly so. Those were
Oh,
phenomenal.
well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I have a background 13 years in corporate finance, and I decided to start writing while working in the world of finance. And The Lost Apothecary came out in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. The London Seance Society came out in 2023, and now here we are, 2025, time for book 3.
I love it. And I love that career pivot because I know you bring a lot of your past experience, I am sure, into researching and writing, and it shows. Your books they have a lot of depth, and we learn a lot about professions and places. So I can
Thank you.
see that
Yeah,
attention.
that's very insightful, and something I'm aware of as a writer, but I don't have a lot of readers pick up on that. But you're exactly right. In all of my books, I like my women protagonists to sort of be best in class or have a specialized technical skill of some kind that ultimately lends itself to the journey that they go on in the story. And I do think that that's in part because I have 13 years in a somewhat specialized field, particularly working with a lot of men. And so, Haven and the Amalfi Curse, we talked a moment ago about nautical archeology. That's a male dominated field. And so, those are some challenges that she faces in the story.
I love that. And you also bring into it a love of travel. And, I know that part of your bio talks about you have a heart for London, of course, but you also love to travel all over the world, Thailand, Ireland, Germany, Belize, and of course, Italy, which is the setting for the Amalfi Curse that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show it
Yep.
this beautiful, beautiful cover. And you also grew up originally in Kansas, and now you live in Florida with your family. And I think that is so wonderful. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny. I'm really kind of a small town Midwestern girl at heart. My husband and we've been married 10 years, and about 8 years ago, living in Wichita, Kansas, we looked at each other and we said, "Let's get out of here." And so we moved to Florida. But we're very avid travelers, and we've always been very adventurous. Love experiencing new things, trying new foods, meeting new people who think differently than us. And I love a good dose of culture shock. So it's really fun to incorporate some of those experiences into my writing.
I love that. And now you can travel with a tax deduction, which is even better.
Exactly. Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah, both of my trips to Positano were write-offs.
Now, I've been there before. It is such a beautiful, beautiful corner of the world, my goodness. And we're going to talk in your story about that natural backdrop that forms, a big part of the plot here. But I'd like to tell our listeners just a little bit about what's going on in the story without giving away any spoilers. Now, we meet Haven Ambrose, and she is a trailblazing nautical archaeologist. And before we get started, I was wondering if you could tell the listeners a little bit about what does a nautical archaeologist do?
Yeah, so a nautical archaeologist is essentially an archaeologist who performs her work underwater. So typically excavating or studying shipwrecks or other debris and man-made material that's underwater, different from like a marine biologist who is studying kind of natural flora and fauna. An archaeologist is looking for remnants of human civilization. So would probably be an advanced scuba diver as well, as is Haven in my story.
Yeah, now she actually has been diving since she was a little girl with her father.
Yep.
And I love, love, love that aspect of your story, which I know we're going to get into. But before he passed away on his final dive, he had spotted something that he communicated to her. I'm not going to give away too much. And she now is in search of it. And she travels to Italy. In fact, she's part of an expedition for science that's going on. But when she gets there, there's a number of strange atmospheric things that are going on, some misfortunes, and she's not able to really make sense of what is happening.
Mhm.
That's part of your story. You also have this other time part of your story from 1821, and we meet a very interesting character. Her name is Mari DeLuca. She and some of the other women of her village practiced the very legendary art of Strangaria. Am I pronouncing that right? As an Italian, I
Perfect.
better be. And it's essentially an ability to harness the power of the ocean. And these women are very bonded. This is something that they have to keep very secret. And now Mari is not somebody who likes the ocean, which is kind of interesting, unlike Haven. And she's actually planning to maybe run off with her lover, who is actually on a boat with some people who have some bad designs on what's going on in Positano.
Right.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a little more about Mari's story before we jump in.
Definitely. So, as we learn in the early pages of the Amalfi Curse, Positano seems favored or insulated from other things that are happening on the Amalfi Coast and the region at large. So this is in the early 1800s. It's a tiny fishing village, a lot different than the Positano that we all know and love today. And all of these other little seaside villages are plagued with pirates or rock collapses, bad catch when the fishermen go out. Whereas Positano has always sort of been very fortunate, suspiciously so. And we learn in the very, first few pages, so this isn't a spoiler, that is the direct result of this coven of 12 women. They're witches of the sea. And that is their contribution to their village and to their families, is they use their power over the sea to ensure that they're not attacked by pirates and to make sure that they have good catch when their fishermen go out so that they can feed their children and their families. And the very first couple of pages of the book is a letter by an anonymous person who's essentially saying, I think there's something awry going on in this village, and I'm willing to divulge that for a price. And he's writing that letter to this very powerful family, these brothers who are Naples' most preeminent shipping owners. And so that is really Mari's quest or journey through the book, is she's trying to keep her village safe from these outside forces, these men that want to take advantage of this secret that they've learned about their witchcraft. But it's a lot more personal for Mari because, as you so beautifully said, she has a secret lover who's on his way to her right at the moment the book starts. She's married. She's supposed to be marrying this man that she loathes. So she's got a lot of personal, very intimate conflict that she's trying to navigate whilst these men are descending on her community and threatening the lives of everybody that she loves.
Yeah. I love that you said personal because I also saw these universal themes running throughout your story about the vulnerability at times of both women and other people in this village, especially ones who stand out for having a particular skill.
Yeah.
So I love you played with that throughout this whole story. Well, then let me ask you about another theme that leapt
Yep.
out at me, and that is this idea of treasure.
Yeah.
Here we had a lot of people who had their mind set on treasures of different kinds. And it's something that Haven felt that she was willing to take a lot of risks for. Her father did as well. And others were even willing to kill over potential treasure. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, why was that important? And maybe how did that idea of treasure maybe shift for people without giving anything away? I don't want you to give away a spoiler.
Right. So, when we think about shipwrecks, I think the next thing people think of is sunken treasure. And the reality is that archaeologists believe there is billions, that's a billions with a B, of unrecovered value on the seafloor that is the result of shipwrecks over thousands of years. And at the beginning of my book, we learn that in addition to Haven's professional endeavors, this sort of three-dimensional photography rendering project that she's doing, she has a secret that she hasn't even told her own team members, which is that she's also looking for what her dad spotted on his final dive, which are these gemstones. And she kind of keeps that secret, but she wants to extract them, not necessarily for money, but because she is trying to assuage the remorse and the guilt that she feels over her father's death. So it's again sort of this personal journey for her. And over the course of the story, we see Haven grappling with whether she should give up that search in order to solve bigger problems in the region that only she really knows the answer to. So we kind of see her grappling with treasure and value and grief and the future of this region. And then, and this is very personal to me. And so I think a lot of my friends and family who've read the book understand kind of what I was going for here. My own dad, he passed away 10 years ago. So a lot of the feelings that Haven expresses around her grief are sort of coming from my own heart. But I was raised very humble. I mentioned I was kind of a country girl at heart. I was raised in the same home from birth to college, a little 2-bedroom log cabin in Kansas. And through my upbringing, I really was just taught that money is not important. It's very low on the list of priorities. And ultimately, that's the journey that my characters are kind of fulfilling. They already go into the story believing that, but through the events of the story, they have to kind of walk the talk and prove to themselves and to others that they too would be willing to give up treasure and jewels and cash in order to maybe save someone's life or better their life or for a friend or family member. So the theme of treasure and really defining what is treasure was so much fun for me. And there are of course some pretty unsavory villains in the book, both in the historical and the contemporary timelines. And we get to see what their definition of treasure is and what they're willing to do for it and how far they'll go. So that simple word has a great deal of meaning in the book.
Yeah. And every time I was thinking about that during the story, I was also thinking about sacrifice because it
Yes.
almost went hand in hand with that
Mhm.
treasure. It's really good. All right. I want to ask you this because we have mothers and daughters and other women who possess this unique ability to exert this power over the ocean. And they also even shared a hair color and some
Mm.
other characteristics. And but I loved this bond that they had based around this power. And I wanted to ask you, was it necessary for them to keep things secret because they faced a lot of peril in 19th century Italy? There was a lot of danger from marauders, from men, from powerful people. And so I wanted to ask you about the nature of keeping that secret for their protection.
Yes, absolutely. So if these women of Positano were to share that they have this really irreplaceable power over the ocean, they know that if that secret were to be let out, they will suddenly be accosted by all of these other groups and men and government agencies and organizations who want that for themselves. No village wants to be attacked by pirates. No village wants their children to go hungry because they're not able to catch fish for their families. And also these women, they have one of their incantations can lead them to valuable things on the ocean floor. So there would be a lot of people wanting to take advantage of that as well. So they kind of know if we let this out, there are a lot of people who will use this for more harm than good. And so they like sort of having this secular village secret. And, there's only 12 of them. And imagine if they were separated or torn apart so that, all of these different groups of men could take advantage of them. So I really liked that it was a small group. I mean, the coven of women, there's 12 of them, but even that is too much for a reader to keep track of. So really, we just kind of get to know about 4 or 5 of the women pretty well, particularly Mari, because she's the protagonist and the leader of the coven. But I liked having this secret. And when my debut, The Lost Apothecary, was also dual timeline, and people ask all the time, what is sort of the biggest benefit or advantage to dual timeline? And for me, I love a secret in the historical narrative that historical character doesn't resolve for the reader, and it's actually the contemporary protagonist who, through journals or manuscripts or some record that she's uncovering, she is able to solve that historical secret and satisfy the reader and give that desired resolution. So I really loved that even Haven, the contemporary protagonist, went into this story, started having the same questions. What is this witchcraft? What happened to these women? And she has to go dig it up. And only at the end do we hear kind of the narrative resolution from her perspective. So in that way, she's in on the secret for quite a bit of her journey as well.
Yeah, it's also too this idea of legacy amongst women. And I thought that was really cool in the story. Not that the story is just for women, but it's just a neat aspect of it. In fact, I want to talk about that idea of legacy because we did see a few legacies here, including, though, the one between Haven and her father. Now, we alluded to that a minute ago about that very special bond. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that relationship with her dad.
Yeah, so Haven's father was the person who taught her how to scuba dive. He was her dive partner. So I'm a scuba diver. My husband and I got certified together, and one of the first things you learn is you always dive with a partner, preferably a partner who you've gone diving with enough times that you kind of know each other's signals. You know if something's wrong based on how they're acting. So Haven's father was that figure for her. He really encouraged her to get into the nautical archeology space. That was his field as well. But unfortunately, he had a stroke, and that prevented him from diving further. And so he was unable to go down a second time to retrieve these valuables that he believes he spotted. And then he had one day when Haven was at the house with him, he had another stroke, and she was drinking margaritas out by the pool and wasn't there inside where maybe if he had called her name, she would have heard him. So she's feeling this sense of guilt that she can't let go because she feels like maybe her dad would have survived if she had been in the house with him. And so one of the reasons why she's so ruthlessly pursuing this treasure that he told her about is because she wants to pay homage to him and honor and kind of do this last thing for him. So it makes it a very difficult choice when bigger problems arise and she realizes she might have to give up this search so that she can deal with other things. So there's a lot of grappling on her side of things, and all the while she's thinking about her dad and sort of their close relationship. It's also his birthday on her first day in Positano, and so she wakes up kind of feeling sad about that. and kind of, marking that date. So that legacy is a very strong plot point that weaves its way through her psyche, even though he's no longer there. We don't see him in the story. We don't have calls or texts from him. We just have memories from Haven's perspective.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And it shows too that that relationship between a father and daughter can be such a powerful and positive influence, on the direction of the daughter's life going forward. For example, for myself, I lost my father as well, and I know he had always wanted to go to law school and didn't end up going, but somehow I end up going to law school. And
There
I
you
don't know,
go.
if certainly there's an influence there and a desire to have that bond and connection with your father. So I thought that was a really beautiful part of the story. Again, in a story where you're dealing with multiple legacies. So it was a nice
Yeah,
contrast.
and over the course of a story, I mean, we as authors, we have to give our characters an arc, so basically a path of growth. And it kind of reminded me, just as you said that law school reference. I mentioned that I spent 13 years in corporate America, and my husband and I, when we moved from Kansas to Florida about 8 years ago, had my dad been alive, I know for a fact he would have frowned on that decision, because he loved the safety net that Kansas job provided for me. And Kansas is a very safe place. There's not a lot of comfort zones to push out that way.
Yeah.
And I know if I had told him, hey, Dad, I'm quitting my job and I'm moving to Florida,
Yeah.
he would have said, Sarah, you're making a huge mistake. But the point is, he is not here any longer, and I get to make these decisions for my life. And that's a form of growth in my own arc as a human. And so I like to think that Haven, in her story, her dad's not there anymore. And so at some point, she gets to turn off his voice and say, I love you, Dad, but I'm going to go do what I need to do. And so that, in a way, was kind of a parallel to some of the decisions I made as I grew up without my dad, too.
Yeah, but also very honoring because he raised you to be a confident woman.
Right.
And we see
Exactly.
that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one more question about Mari because we mentioned earlier that she hates the sea, which is so
Yes.
interesting given that she has such a significant power over it. And but in contrast, Haven is so comfortable there. And I
Mhm.
was wondering if you were meaning for the sea to just represent something for each of them because it's a big obstacle in some respects.
Absolutely. The sea is a character in the story. Um, not necessarily masculine, feminine, but it's always there. Almost every single scene in the book takes place on or under or next to the ocean, with maybe one or two exceptions at that archive in Naples. So the irony, and I loved this irony, is in this first chapter, we learn exactly like you said, Mari is the leader of her coven of witches of the sea, and she loathes the sea because it has taken two things from her, two people she loved very much. And so she almost views it or humanizes it as this villain. And there's a really poignant scene, speaking of character arcs and growth and learning, there's a really poignant scene where Mari makes a pretty daring escape, and she reflects at the end of that the sea actually helped her in all of these ways that she hadn't acknowledged in the moment. But it protected her. It did a lot of things for her on this particular evening. And later she kind of reflects on that. And then Haven, she hasn't lost anything to the sea. It's been, in her own words, she calls it her childhood playground. It's been nothing but good memories with her father. It is the venue of her profession, her career. That's where she works, is in the ocean. So she loves the sea. She's very comfortable with it. And I like that differing perspective of the two. And in this way, the sea is kind of just like a morally gray character through the whole book. You never really know, is it going to help? Is it going to harm? And Mari reflects on that at the very end of the book, that she has this complicated relationship with the ocean.
Yeah. As we do with all of our powers and strengths,
Right.
Oftentimes those are some of our biggest weaknesses as well, but
Yes. Yep.
and you're really good, by the way, at creating these beautiful scenes because you did show us under and on top of the water, but also those dusty archives. I
Yeah.
felt the absence of the sea when I was in there. I thought that was
Yeah.
really well done.
Well, thank you. I don't know how to write a book without some sort of archival investigation. Truly, I mean that. Every single book I write ends up with my characters flipping through some sort of lost or damaged journal, book, letter, something. And especially when I was earlier in my writing days, and I would go do some research at the British Library, like for the Lost Apothecary, for instance. I think those memories of requesting archival material and then sifting through it, I think they must be seared into my brain because I just love the idea that this information can be buried between pages and in the basement of a library until it sees the light of day and someone does something with that information.
Yeah, it's a mystery until
Yes.
then. I love it. Well, I'm going to show this beautiful, beautiful cover one more time. And I'm encouraging all of our listeners, you will love this book and you will feel transported in many ways with these beautiful stories, with the plot, with, of course, this village, which is amazing then and now. And I am just so excited for you. I think this book is going to be fantastic. Now, I want to tell our listeners how to find you. You have a wonderful website, sarahpenner.com, and that's Sarah with an H. And you're on Facebook, on Instagram. And again, we're telling everybody, go read this book, pick it up. You're going to love it. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christian. This has been wonderful.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon with that next story. In fact, do we have a next story that might be in the offing? What do you think?
Yes, my next book that I'm working on is the sequel to The Lost Apothecary. So
Excellent.
if all goes well, that should be my 2027 release.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we hope you come back on the Bookstorm podcast. We love having you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, listeners, that was Sarah Penner with The Amalfi Curse. We just absolutely love this book. What a fantastic discussion. She is just so thoughtful, and her books are exciting and entertaining, but you also learn a lot. And I want to tell our listeners how to get in touch with us. If you want to follow us on bookstormpodcast.com at our website, we also have a fantastic YouTube channel. You can see all of these authors and all of our interviews. Just search for Bookstorm and podcast, and we should come right up. And we've got an incredible lineup. We've got Christina McMorris with The Girls of Good Fortune, Clements Michelin, Our Last Resort, Maggie Stiefvater, The Listeners, Rick Mafina, If Two Are Dead, Brad Taylor, Into the Gray Zone, Chanel Cleaton, The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes, Jesse Rosen, All the Signs, Tess Gerritsen, The Summer Guests, and we continue to grow every week. Thank you for sharing our socials, for interacting with us. We love hearing who you want to hear from next. So stay on the radar with us. Until next time, remember Bookstorm Podcast, and we are just thrilled because your favorite authors are here.